Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. A mother's plea to keep two men accused of murdering her son behind bars. Should Gregory and Travis McMichael get bond in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery?
Ahmaud wasn't allowed to go home. Ahmaud wasn't even allowed the chance to live.
A new review into the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. This time, it's the prosecutors that are under fire.
A defense attorney says the video you're watching right now proves a detective lied on the stand.
Was there a cover-up in this case?
I definitely think there was.
We explain. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast.
Son charged with killing a man while he jogged through a Georgia neighborhood will remain behind bars awaiting trial. Gregory and Travis McMichael are facing 9 charges, including malice murder, for the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery in February. Investigators say Gregory McMichael started chasing Arbery as he left a construction site. Son Travis McMichael is accused of actually firing the shots. A third man is charged with boxing Arbery in while filming the incident. The defendants claim self-defense. Attorneys for the McMichaels told a judge the defendants deserve bail because they're, quote, good people who don't pose a flight risk. But, Brian, a shocking jailhouse call really helped the state.
Shocking indeed. The prosecutors argue that the McMichaels hold views that make them a danger to society. In a recorded call, the defendant, Gregory McMichael, said shooting Ahmaud Arbery was, in his words, a good deed. Here's the tape.
Every minute, I appreciate it. I just all night last night. I can't sleep. I can't, go. I got my mask on and everything. I'm trying to sleep, but I can't. It's just, I wake up every 15 or 20 minutes. It's bothering me.
You've heard the old saying, "No good deed goes unpunished."
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, that's it. That's the shining example right there.
Later, an emotional plea from the victim's mother as she asked the judge to keep her son's alleged killer behind bars.
During the course of the GBI's secondary investigation, they discovered what they believe to be one of Ahmaud's bone fragments near where he was murdered in Satilla Shores. They wanted to know what we wanted to do with those pieces of my son that they were still discovering in the streets. I have sat here and I've listened to the attorneys for both Travis and Gregory McMichael. Their defense is summed up in an idea of grabbing their guns, chasing, boxing my son in with the vehicles, pursuing him, and eventually shooting him to death, ripping his body into pieces. These men are proud of what they've done. And they want to go home because in their selfish minds, they think that they're the good guys. And I and my family is left literally to pick up the pieces.
The judge mentioned that video of the shooting that we've all seen so many times while ruling on bail.
Court does not intend to grant bond as to Travis McMichael or Greg McMichael. There's a video. You can interpret the video in a number of different ways. The video, to me, tells me that there's a significant risk for other dangers to the community. The individuals that do that need to be aware of the fact that they can end up exactly where they are now.
So, Terry, did the McMichaels ever really stand a chance of getting out, or was this more of a way for the defense to learn a little bit more about the evidence prosecutors have against their clients?
Well, I do think the defense was fishing for information, but I have to say they put on a good defense here. They had a number of witnesses who testified that these individuals are not going to run. And in fact, the witness who had the best impression as far as I was concerned, because I listened to some of them, was the landlord who said that she would actually give her entire house to the McMichaels if in fact they did not show up. So clearly the judge is probably going to rule against the McMichaels here because, you know, the seriousness of the crime. But I do think the defense stood a chance.
And that's exactly what the judge did. But Brian, you can have good defense tactics and strategy, but here the facts just were not on these defendants' side. Good people, good deed, these are not the kind of words you want to be uttering in a proceeding like this.
Yeah, it's not a smart move here. I understand that many defense attorneys feel for their clients, and so do I here. with mine. But this is not the language I think was going to work with this judge in terms of asking for some amount of bond or bail, and the facts and the evidence against them was really stacking high.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can do a good job as an attorney, but you can have facts that just stack up against you, and that's exactly what happened here. So, Terry, one of the family members, presumably the mother of the victim, was crying in the courtroom as that video of the shooting played again. Just another sad moment.
Yes, it was very sad, and in fact, she was afraid for her life. She said she thought if the McMichaels got out, that she would be in danger, that she would be in fear. So I do think that that had an influence as far as the judge was concerned.
Certainly. And still ahead here on Law and Crime Daily, a pizza delivery ending with a strangulation. It's a trial we're following gavel to gavel at Law and Crime. But first, harsh words from the Department of Justice for its own prosecutors' handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Did the millionaire pedophile The Justice Department has completed its review of the original botched prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. Terri Austin has that report now. Terry?
Aaron, the review of Epstein's so-called sweetheart deal found no wrongdoing and no ethics violations by the prosecutor, Alex Acosta, who ended up in the Trump administration. But the review did find that Acosta used poor judgment when he allowed the now dead sex offender off the hook. Former federal prosecutor and Law&Crime analyst Gene Rossi says Acosta's non-prosecution agreement with Epstein was essentially an immunity deal.
He didn't even get a slap on the wrist. He was saying, we're not going to deal with you. I have never seen in my 27 years with the Department of Justice an alleged predator like Jeffrey Epstein preying on teenagers, 13 and 14 years old, for which they had a boatload of corroboration. It just wasn't her allegations. You had documents and diaries that corroborated what they say. I am ashamed that this prosecution agreement, non-prosecution agreement, was approved by the Department of Justice.
Okay, Terry, so Alex Acosta himself released a statement saying the report proves that he was within his authority and that this was not a sweetheart deal. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree wholeheartedly, and I agree with Gene Rossi. This was a sweetheart deal because even if you are in your legal authority, he wasn't in his ethical authority. And as far as I'm concerned, he allowed Epstein, who obviously was alive at the time, to get off with a much lighter sentence, and he only served a small amount of time. And so I think at the end of the day, the biggest ethical problem here is that then prosecutor Acosta did not give the victims the rights that they are entitled to, and he totally ignored them. And it almost made it seem like, Aaron, he was, sort of covering something up. So that was his biggest issue as far as I'm concerned.
Something was fishy about this. So, Brian, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, a fellow Republican, slammed Acosta's actions as a disgusting failure and said Epstein should be rotting behind bars. So I think that puts another point on this on top of what Gene Rossi said.
Exactly. I mean, there's strong words, but the big difference between Gene Rossi and the senator here is that Gene Rossi doesn't have the ability to move these thoughts into actual legal power, in the sense that this should be something that we shouldn't just be talking about ethically. It should be something that prosecutors are not allowed to do at all. If we want prosecutors to act a certain way in these types of cases, we've got to make sure that laws and procedures are set in place to do so.
Exactly. Prosecutors have a special duty to ensure justice. That's in the ethics rules. A ballet dancer is under arrest on charges she murdered her estranged husband. Police in Manatee County, Florida have arrested this woman, Ashley Benefeld. They say she shot Doug Benefield, who was 30 years her senior, during an argument. Ashley told police Doug was attacking her, but the police say the bullet trajectory suggests he wasn't even facing her when she fired. Celebrity attorney Michael Avenatti has learned he'll go to trial on April 26th on accusations he embezzled $300,000 from his porn star client Stormy Daniels and for forging her signature. The money came from Daniels' book, Full Disclosure, which included mentions of her alleged affair with Donald Trump. Jury selection has commenced in an Ohio case we're watching. Angenette Levy has a preview.
Erica Stefanko is accused of murdering Army veteran Ashley Biggs back in 2012. Biggs's body was found in a cornfield in northern Ohio. She had been working as a pizza delivery driver. Prosecutors say Biggs and her ex-boyfriend, Chad Cobb, were fighting over custody of their daughter. Stefanko and Cobb allegedly lured Biggs with a fake order for pizza and killed her. Cobb pleaded guilty and is serving life without parole. He's agreed to testify against Stefanko, who is his ex-wife. And we will be carrying this case live on Law and Crime once the testimony begins. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Angenette Levy.
And still to come right here on the broadcast, video of police executing a warrant at a New Jersey home is proof, a defense attorney says, that an officer later lied on the stand. We break that case down right after this. Police approach a New Jersey home, use a battering ram to bust down a door and barge inside. Surveillance video shows it took about 6 seconds from the time the first officer approaches the door to the moment the battering ram slams the door open. It looks like a typical drug bust, but this time the defense says it's way more serious because the defense says the video you're watching shows that a lead detective lied on the witness stand. I recently spoke with defense attorney Joseph Mazraani about how he got his client off the hook based on what he alleges are the lies of the police.
We see a lot of these cases, and a lot of times it's hard for us to find proof to actually prove lies, but in this particular case, we were able to.
Take me through your case. What was your client accused of doing, and how did the procedure roll out here?
So, client was accused of selling marijuana out of their residence. It was a multi-dwelling residence, so there was more than one family there. So there are people living in the basement, people living upstairs. It wasn't just one family. It's kind of unknown whether it was actually our clients who were doing this or others living in that same dwelling, not connected to our clients. Police obtained a search warrant after conducting some investigation, and the search warrant called for the police to first knock and announce their presence before entering the premises. And that rule is a very, very old rule. It predates the Constitution. Police show up and they execute the warrant. Now, when the defense gets the initial reports, we have it on paper, we read, and the police officer in this particular case, the lead detective, indicated that they first knocked and announced their presence before then breaching the door and entering the residence. As a matter of practice, in my practice, if I come into a case early enough where I can send an investigator out to see if there's any evidence to show the police entry or show who's out there or any type of, looking for things that may help the case and kind of shed light to see if the police did their job properly or not. And it showed a completely different scenario or set of facts than what's in the police report. So then we filed a motion to suppress. And during the suppression hearing, the police officer testified untruthfully by basically saying he walks up to the door with his colleagues behind him, and then he steps up on the porch, knocks loudly with his big hands, waits 10 to 20 seconds or 10 to 15 seconds, depending on which version he went with, first or second. And then he knocks again. And, during the knocks, they announced that police were there for the search warrant. And he said he did that loudly. And once he testified to those facts, I got up to cross-examine him, knowing what actually did happen, because I have the surveillance video. And I started to question him about that. And immediately, I think he probably realized that I have something that he's not aware of, and immediately began to back up on his initial testimony.
So procedurally here, this is what's amazing to me. The prosecutor is the one who originally elicited the testimony from the police that this is exactly how this went down, not knowing that you, in your proverbial back pocket, have this video that you're going to bring out.
That's correct. The judge ruled that it was the prosecutor's obligation to put on a witness to show that the execution of the warrant was proper. I wanted him to tell me his version, open-ended. I didn't want to ask leading questions initially, and that's what the prosecutor did for me. He told his version in an open-ended manner, and he was already locked into a version by saying it on the record.
When confronted, prosecutors moved to dismiss the charges. Case closed? Not quite. What happened next, Attorney Mazraani believes, adds up to a cover-up. That's when we return on Law and Crime Daily.
A New Jersey defendant beats a list of drug charges when his defense attorney discovers video he says contradicts the testimony of a lead detective. Court transcripts say that detective testified police busted down the door of this building 10 to 20 seconds after knocking and announcing that they were there. Then that detective changed his mind to 10 to 15 seconds. This surveillance video shows it was actually a 5 or maybe 6 second pause. But that's not all. The detective who testified that he was the one who knocked later backtracked, saying he might have been one of the people standing on the ground. Plus, there are questions over whether the video shows police trying the doorknob before knocking.
Prosecutors threw out the case, but a win for this defendant may mean a loss for future defendants. Defense attorney Joseph Mazraani claims prosecutors tried to block him from making these issues known to other judges, other lawyers, and to the public.
They dismissed the case. That was the first, in my opinion, that was the first step of a cover-up. And then I sent a letter to the head of the office, who was the acting prosecutor at the time, saying, "Hey, this happened. This needs to be investigated." And it got investigated according to them. But as you see from the letters that you have, they found that the allegations were not sustained, meaning that no wrong happened. The officer did not lie. The officer did not do anything wrong. To me, the actions that they even took afterwards by attempting to stop me from distributing this information to other defense attorneys and other judges speaks of a cover-up from the dismissal of the case in the beginning to the very end.
In your opinion, did the officer lie on the stand?
Absolutely.
And if you were the person sitting in the seat of judgment in this case, what do you think should happen procedurally to the officer, to the prosecutors, and anyone else involved?
I don't think the prosecutor that was dealing with the case knew. Right? He just took the word of his officer, which is what generally happens in every case. Prosecutors and officers work together day in and day out. You know, we're all human beings. Friendships develop, sentiments develop towards other people, and we don't want to believe that this particular officer is not a good officer, or is lying, or is a person who cuts corners. So I really can't blame that particular prosecutor for anything he did. I do blame higher-ups in his office for dismissing the case and not allowing the judge to make the proper credibility findings against that officer.
The prosecutor's office refused repeated requests by Law and Crime to discuss the case. Defense attorney Mazraani's request for an internal police investigation involving alleged false testimony ended this way. The investigation failed to prove or disprove your allegation. The officer was found to be in violation of department rules and regulation and will be disciplined and receive training. Despite that finding, attorney Mazraani says this little case has big picture implications.
They basically took the side of the officer that he remembered incorrectly, which is, if you look at the transcript, it's obvious that that's not what happened. And then basically that he didn't lie. He just got confused, which is a very easy defense when you're dealing with a secret environment of internal affairs investigations.
The conversation happening around the country right now is one of holding police accountable. How does this case fit within that conversation?
This is actually the perfect case for that conversation, because in this particular case, that officer, there is no sustained non-credibility finding against them, and there's no IA, internal affairs, non-credibility or truthfulness finding against them. So he's clean.
Brian, let's talk about the bigger picture here. Knock and announce. What's the legal standard police must follow when they're executing a warrant?
So every state is different, but the way they all come down to the same issue is When the judge tells you how to execute a warrant, whether it be no knock or knock and announce, you have to follow those procedures the judge hands down. Here we're being told that didn't happen. They were told to do one thing and decided to do another, and that's improper based on the information they gave the judge.
So, Terry, there are such things as no-knock warrants, but they're supposed to be hard to get. Does it disturb you that the video purportedly shows the police trying to mess with the doorknob before they knocked, or at least that's what it looks like it shows?
It's very disturbing, Aaron. And in New Jersey, a no-knock warrant has to be, proven obviously beyond a probable cause that they can go in there. And the best way to get the evidence is to go in there without knocking. And it is supposed to show that it's, sort of making sure that the officers are protected. So unless they can show those two things, they shouldn't really have been issued a no-knock warrant. And interestingly enough, in New Jersey, they do have a bill now pending to end all no-knock warrants. And it's very similar to what's going on across the country. So we'll see what happens to that.
Yes, and Brian, that officer has a clear record. It's hard for defense attorneys to find this information.
Yeah, because it's not printed anywhere. There's not going to be a transcript of a trial because they dismissed the case. There's not going to be information. And if we do have that list of bad cops, as we do in so many states, he's not going to make it to it. And so therefore, this issue, this problem, just going to happen another day.
It makes your job a lot harder as a public defender.
Exactly.
And that's our broadcast here on Law and Crime Daily. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Law and Crime Daily with Brian Buckmire and Terri Austin continues next time right here on the Law and Crime Network. We have much to discuss when it comes to justice in America.